All right, I am getting this going on YouTube so that we're in compliance for the meeting. It's going to take a little second here, but it should let everybody know that it is streaming live. All right, I'm going to mute that so we don't have to listen to ourselves twice. All right, I think we should probably go ahead and get started. Thank you all for joining us for this special meeting of the policy coordinating group. We have a couple kind of big things to take care of here. I know we only have 7 members currently on, so I'm not sure if we're actually going to be able to vote on any of this. We'll have to take a look at that when we go over the bylaws as well. So thank you again for joining us. And I just want to introduce the people that are in the room here with me. Melina Wilson is one of our case managers, and then we have our new intern. If you say hi, the camera will.
Hi.
Maybe point you.
Hello.
It's coming. It's thinking about it. All right, so Maggie Martino is over here as well. You might catch her at some point. And then Jen Peacock, you all know, is our community engagement coordinator. So we're going to go ahead and call this meeting to order at 1:04. And so the first topic that we want to address is looking at the purpose and function of our policy coordinating group, and then reviewing the bylaws that we have drafted currently. After meeting with the lead bureau when they were here, they reaffirmed for us that the policy coordinating group really is a governing board for pre-arrest diversion, that no one entity or office owns pre-arrest diversion, but rather the governing board is there we go, is the leader, so to say, of pre-arrest diversion for the county. So you all are the voting members of the policy coordinating group, and we'll be going over what the draft bylaws look like and discussing what that membership and voting are going to look like going forward. In looking at all of that, I do want to bring us back to the definition from the Lead Support Bureau's document about defining the purpose and role of the policy coordinating group. Let's see if I have it. Oh. All right, it is really reflective up there. So here we go. One second. There we are. All right, so I'm going to share my screen here so everybody can see it. So this is the text from the Lead Bureau's toolkit for establishing a pre-arrest diversion site. Each site lead policy coordinating group serves as the policy making and stewardship body for its initiative. The PCG is composed of senior members of their respective agencies who are authorized to make decisions on behalf of their offices. So the members of our policy coordinating group have the authority to vote for their agency. So whether you're a director or a representative of your agency, you have that authority to vote. Together, the PCG's members develop the local vision for lead pre-arrest diversion, make policy level decisions for the initiative, and within their respective agencies, ensure that sufficient resources are dedicated for the success of the initiative, and review, approve, and modify overarching policies to reflect the site's intentions, including but not limited to participant eligibility criteria, inclusion/exclusion criteria, diversion eligible criminal charges, and exclusionary criteria, if any. In addition, the policy coordinating group is responsible for establishing and stewarding evaluation, communications, and budget plans. PCG should include high-ranking representatives of local law enforcement. We have those. Public health agencies, we have that. We don't have any mayors currently. We have some county executive, county board members. We have the public defender's office, prosecutor's office, although I don't see them on here today. We have some city council members. We did have a member from the NAACP, however, he took on a new role. So we are looking for someone new to represent any civil rights agencies or organizations or racial justice organizations, community representatives, and business community. So I believe we had somebody from the, what's Elgin's DNA Downtown Neighborhood Association as well. Depending on site-specific issues, the PCG may also include religious leaders, subject matter experts such as housing, behavioral health, employment, sex worker advocacy, and the courts. Responsibilities per the lead bureau. The PCG typically develops and executes a project memorandum of understanding, MOUs, that documents the agreements among all partners, selects the project management entity, and ensures adequate project management, reviews and approves operational protocols, reviews and approves contracting processes for project services, reviews reports submitted by the operational partners and project manager, ensures the development and implementation of an appropriate evaluation plan, sets communications policies, approves the project's budget, and provides oversight to project contracts. So that's a lot. That's from their description. Obviously, as with everything with LEAD, they do grant sites flexibility within realistic parameters to best fit for our location and our site and our needs. So we don't have to adhere 100% to all of this, but this is the guiding document that we should try to aspire to. Any questions on any of that in terms of the purpose and direction of the policy coordinating group? I don't think I can see everybody, so if somebody's raising a hand, I can't tell. I'm gonna go with no. You can go ahead and type up or speak if you have a question. Actually, I can do that way. I can see more people. Okay. So that's that document. Now we can look at our draft bylaws. Oh my goodness, the reflection is terrible up here. It's the safety protocol. Here we go. All right, so these were last updated on August 9th. I know Corey Dixon put a lot of work into these. I provided a little bit of insight as well from other documents. So we have a couple main points of question, I believe. I know at one point we discussed whether it was an advisory board or a governing board. I think that answer was provided for us. The PCG is in fact a governing board. So in terms of the name, policy, it's the pre-arrest diversion policy coordinating group. Any issues with that? Sound good? Purpose, pre-arrest diversion policy coordinating group is a countywide governing board that provides oversight and direction of the law enforcement assisted diversion or LEAD initiative and advice to the PAD program. That work for everybody? Yes. All right. The goals come straight from the LEAD Bureau. These are the stated goals of the Law Enforcement Assisted Diversion Initiative. I'm not going to read through all of those. I will assume you can read through any issues or concerns regarding goals.
Hey, Martha.
Yes.
Hey, I just want to point out the attachment, I believe, that was sent out to everyone with the Zoom meeting had the wrong updated version.
It did. This is current.
Highlighting. So you may need to send out this one.
Okay, I can do that. Does anybody want it sent right now? Okay, I will send it immediately after. If we make any edits, I'll make sure this is the copy that's sent out. Yeah, thanks, Corey. All right, membership. So the PCG shall include high-ranking representatives of local law enforcement, and this is the list that we just went over. So we do not have representatives of mayors. Was there another group or organization we were missing currently? Oh, the civil rights. Yeah, we need to make sure we get them back on board. So that's something that we will address in terms of membership. Any other questions about membership? Okay. Moving along, let's see. So individuals or the organizations they represent must be located in or serve the people of Kane County. Membership shall consist of no less than 7, no more than 15. I think this needs to be changed to being numbers in both places or text in both places. So we'll just make a little change there. Does that sound like a decent number to everybody? I think currently we have more than 15 listed, although I know attendance is always less than that. But does 7 to 15, I think looking towards the future, that seems to make sense. All right. Duty shall consist of program policy review, program oversight, and service outcomes. Membership shall consist of 3 appointed terms at 3 years each, staggered with no more than 3/4 of the policy coordinating group to be appointed or reappointed at once. Does that sound agreeable? Maximum of 3 consecutive term appointments are allowed. A 3-year break is required if 3 consecutive terms or 9 years have been completed.
Martha, I spoke to Rochelle about the becoming of, instead of advisory membership, but actually that our new proposal is it's a governing body and like a board of directors and making a decision, not only the policy wise, but as you indicated, the fiscal, agents and all that. She is talking to civil about issue whether the public defender as a office can be part of the as a membership or being even appointed. So she's I invited her to today's meeting, but I think she has another meeting. But she is, she's consulting with our own civil attorney too. So I just wanted to let you know. So I cannot say, because she said like whether me as a person, as a public defender, but not representing the office, whether I could become a member, or based on this bylaws, what my understanding was that if I have another position, I go somewhere, so another person from public defender's office to be, represent and part of the group. And she had a question about that. So she's consulting. So I just wanted to let you know.
Okay. Yeah, and I think that's a good, it's a good point, and it's probably best for everybody in any office to make sure that that's okay for their office, for them to be representing in that way. I know we don't have anyone from the state's attorney's office currently on here, but
I will say that Jamie Mosser is on the board of Mutual Ground. I mean, she's been on the board since before she became the state's attorney, but it wasn't a conflict after. So just an FYI.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I would just add too as well, if we can enter some language that could allow for a liaison from a certain office that maybe doesn't have voting power. So if we find out that it's not acceptable or whatever, we can have somebody that could potentially be a part of the governing board as appointed in the liaison fashion, but they don't count towards quorum and they don't count towards having a vote on anything that occurs.
Okay, and if it helps, if it would be of any benefit for me to be in a meeting with them to help clarify the purpose of this and everything, I'm happy to join that discussion.
Okay, I'll let her know. It is more like the public defender's office, public defenders, even immunity, and then we have a very statutorily what public defender's office can do. So I think that she's checking on that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Because we definitely want and need that voice at the table. I think it's a very important one for what we're doing. So whatever we can do to make sure that we don't lose the public defender's voice here, I think is important. All right. Okay, and then we have the the clause at the end here, only the governing board shall determine PCG fiscal agents. So meetings, general meetings shall be held on a quarterly basis, which is what we've been doing. Additional meetings like this one as needed, not to exceed 8 meetings per calendar year. Each partnering organization is allowed up to 2 representatives, and then we'll get into the discussion about how those 2 representatives represent votes. Because there's some questions around that and how we best represent fairly the community voice with the number of members that we have from different organizations. 1 meeting per quarter, and should be special meetings are at the discretion of the chairs or the governing board. Attendance will be taken, and each organization must have attended a minimum of 2 meetings per year. Does that sound fair? Okay. So we'll have after we go through the rest of this, we'll have a discussion about officers for the policy coordinating group. In terms of voting, all members may vote. Voting rights are dependent on approved membership, a 2/3 vote of the members. Currently, we have this stated as 1 per organization. So I think we may need to have a deeper discussion about how that's represented. And because I know we have several law enforcement agencies, do we count them as one organization as law enforcement, or as each agency gets their own vote? Similarly with county board members.
I would say each agency.
So currently we have the sheriff's office, Elgin PD, and Carpentersville all represented. So that would be 3 votes, and depending on how many organizations decide they want to stay on the policy coordinating group, 3 votes could be a significant representation. Is that worth further discussion to people? And the same goes for county board. We have 3 county board members represented as well. So that I don't know if they will all attend every meeting, but they could. There's nothing stopping all 3 county board members or all 3 law enforcement agencies from attending a meeting. How do people feel about that in terms of voting?
Martha, this is Michael at the health department. I think giving people a vote makes sense to me, but then I think it just puts more emphasis on the need to have good attendance so we have a higher number. So in that case, any one group wouldn't be, say, 3 out of 7 votes, but hopefully 3 out of 10 or 3 out of 12 or something like that.
Okay. And I only brought that up because the lead bureau did mention that at some of their sites, they give all law enforcement 1 vote. That's just it's a thing that's done in other places. So I just want to make sure people are comfortable with, potentially 3 county board votes, potentially 3 law enforcement agency votes, rounding out whatever our total ends up being in a meeting. Sounds like everybody's okay with that. So every member gets a vote. Okay.
Do we, if I can, in your question, I kind of hear some concern around the departments having a lot of weight in the decision-making, right, of the governing board. So I guess my question, my next logical question would be, are we looking to cap the number of law enforcement agencies who can participate in the PCG? Because as we continue to grow and people add, if that's a real true concern, that's something that we need to think about on the front end.
That's a really good point. So those were the first 3 agencies that joined. Do we cap it at 3? And when those 3 rotate off, other agencies that have joined can join? Is that fair? And do we similarly cap county board members at 3?
cap which board members at 3?
We have 3 county board members as well. Do we cap the membership for? And I mean, I guess we could say similarly, do we cap social service agencies at 3? Do we cap treatment centers at 3?
No, I'm not interested in capping board members. I'll take 3 burn tips.
Oh, wait,
I'll take that.
he doesn't. 3 county board members can have 3 unique votes. Okay, so we're just,
For once, I'll agree with Corey.
all right, so we're just capping law enforcement membership at 3.
Yeah, I think so.
All right.
Well,
no,
let's hear from law enforcement. I think I saw Tony on. Is he still on?
I think he's staying quiet.
Tony,
Yes, I will chime in. I would say, you might hear something different from me than maybe other law enforcement. It's a delicate balance because I think capping membership means that the buy-in will be tough because they don't feel like they have a voice. But having them all be voting members is going to disenfranchise probably some other groups. So having a seat at the table, but having law enforcement have 1 vote would then kind of like looking forward, make it easy to say, yes, you can be part of the policy coordinating group so that they can have their input, but their vote only counts as 1 vote collectively for law enforcement for the county. That to me makes the most sense, because then if I'm a new agency signing on, then I know I at least get to give my input. And, then my persuasiveness on whether or not, I can get other people to see our perspective and go, yeah, that makes sense. I always have that ability, but I agree. What if we end up, what if it takes off and a couple of years from now we have 12 agencies and there are 12 votes? I think that's going to take especially like the community activist side of things and have them go, okay, this is just a government thing. This is more of the same. I don't want it to turn into that. So I would say limiting law enforcement to 1 vote, but not cap how many can be part of the PCG. That would be my 2 cents.
that makes sense. So there's downfalls to both sides of it. So I guess we probably look at more of the impact or the effect. And I'm going to side with Tony on that. I think having more activism from the community is more important than having an overwhelming number of agencies. And listen, this is like similar to the Constitution. This is a living, breathing document. If we put something in place and it doesn't work for us, we can always come back and change it, update it, and do what we need to do.
Personally, can I chime in here? Personally, I would like every organization to feel like they're participating. Whether they've got a vote or not is really a bit different than whether or not they feel that they're being heard. So we need to make sure that this is very open and very fluid.
Absolutely. And I will point out too that we also have a community leadership team that community activists and advocates are always welcome to join. They do also have a voice, and the community leadership team will have a voting member on the PCG as well. So that does help to provide some of that balance that I think that you're trying to address there. And I made a note here, so we're capping law enforcement agency membership at 3 agencies, but each agency gets a vote. Is that correct? That's what I'm taking from this? Okay. All right.
They said not to cap law.
Oh, did you say not to cap agency membership
For law enforcement.
for law enforcement
But
agencies?
one collective vote. Right?
Yes, that would be what I was saying,
And
was
for
to
it, for
not cap members, but just to cap the voting. I mean, cap the vote at 1 would be my suggestion, but whatever you want to cap, I would say cap the number of votes, but don't cap who can be at the table.
Gotcha. Okay. So I'm just trying to think how we Because I do feel like if we don't cap the membership and we end up with 12 agencies at the table and tell them they get one vote, that also feels pretty restrictive to me. Can we say the number of votes is capped at 1/3 of the number of total law enforcement agencies present? That way, if 9 agencies vote, they get 3 votes.
Yeah,
Is
I
that
would
making
say,
it too complex?
no, I would say that we do, because if we want to guard also against, like, if we have 12 agencies on here, then we're not doing this right. We shouldn't have 12 out of 15, being law enforcement agencies. So we might have to just be specific about that too as well, how many law enforcement agencies we're allowed to be on, or how many, what's the preferred number of community members versus just a total overall.
So we currently have 19 organizations and agencies listed as voting members. So that we're already at 19. Of those, I believe at least 5 or 6 probably are going to end up saying that they don't have the time or bandwidth to actually serve on a governing board and will back out. So that still leaves us pretty darn close to the 15 member limit. Of those, 3 are law enforcement agencies.
Right.
So I do think it's worth discussing this further about how you want to phrase that.
How would you feel about capping that, the number of agencies law enforcement agencies at 5, since we're already at 3 and looking to add more? And that number of 15, bumping that up to 18, since we're already essentially at 15, minus the ones that are going to walk away.
Anybody else discussion?
We can rotate in.
I also do feel like specifically naming law enforcement, while I understand the intent, might not be the most productive, because I think we have to look at the total list of membership, and that they list 10 entities that should be represented. So, I mean, I think we also, in some way with the membership, need to draw out more specifically that, we at least a certain number of members need to represent a certain number of these named entities, so that no one entity becomes too disproportionately represented. I mean, we're pretty close to the target of hitting that 10. We're missing the 2 currently. So once we address that, even if we cap it at 18, simply stating that those 10 or a minimum of 7 of the 10 named entities should always be represented on the board means that no one entity can be overrepresented. Am I overthinking this?
Probably.
Probably. Okay. If you're all comfortable with just capping law enforcement membership, that's fine. It's your decision to make. I'm just providing some more input.
Melina, what do you think?
I think that every agency of law enforcement with the input is too much. If it was to me, I would put all agencies together and make them vote on one vote and then come back to the table with their one opinion, or their one vote for things. I think,
Yeah.
that's a lot for law enforcement to many agencies to vote.
Recap that, I couldn't hear.
Too many agencies to vote, too many law enforcement agencies to vote. I think that it should be a minimum of the voting for the law agencies. Law enforcement agencies.
So she's saying that there should be unlimited membership of agencies, but
Yes.
they all get one vote. Like collectively one vote.
Collectively one vote. Basically what Regano said.
Which is what
Tony said.
Sergeant
Regano
Morgano said in the
and
beginning.
Corey agreed.
Okay.
I'm alive, really agreed.
If that's what everybody, and then that way we don't really have to rephrase anything about membership because it is irrelevant how many agencies are members, they only have one vote.
But we will still include everything else about membership,
Oh, yeah.
right? Okay.
Okay, all right. And and this is, I'm gonna throw this out to you all, but I know we have, well, we've got 7 individuals here that could vote. I would say that it would probably be best, and if anybody knows protocol better than me, please let me know, but I think we're probably still gonna have to send this out to the whole group and not finalize anything in today's meeting. Okay. Okay. So that's voting, and then the last portion on here is amendments.
Hey, Martha, can I ask a quick question? Just along the lines of voting, I think whatever we look at for expanding, then attendance starts to become even more critical. So I wonder if tracking and reporting back to people attendance. So let's say we land on 3 votes for law enforcement, 1 vote, whatever it ends up being. If people don't participate and it ends up being 0 votes, that's not what we're looking for either. So, whether it's just a procedural thing that you do in terms of letting people know when they miss meetings, the importance of being here, or if it's a formal thing to say, hey, the expectation is you make at least half or whatever, if it's only quarterly. I know people are busy, but otherwise all this discussion is for naught if people aren't going to be here anyway.
Yep, good point. Absolutely. All right, and then, so with amendments, any amendment to these bylaws may be adopted by a 2/3 vote of the members present at any meeting, provided written notice of the proposed amendment and the date of such meeting shall have been given to the members at least 2 weeks in advance. When bylaws are amended, a revised copy that contains the revisions will be prepared. I think that's pretty standard. Are there any questions, concerns, comments, anything missing, anything that we should add now to make this more clear, a more solid document? I will be sending this out so everybody has a chance to review it and think about it some more. No, I appreciate all the discussion. Thank you. All right. So back to, if I can find my notes. Here we go. All right. Leadership roles, chairs, co-chairs, secretary. We do need somebody to take notes. I have been trying most of these meetings and usually miss somebody that's in attendance. So this is totally up to you all, whether you want to have a single chair, whether you want to have co-chairs, what other roles or positions you want to make sure we have established, and then we can lay that out, present that to everybody by email, and then vote on it at the next meeting.
Quick question. Is there any money for us to manage?
So at most well, I can't even say most, the lead sites that started out and what their modeling is all based on is policy coordinating groups who themselves applied for the grant funding to get their initiatives started. So that is why they're designated as having that financial control. I mean, I guess my instinct would be to say not really, because the county has the funds. However, you will be making some decisions in terms of, when we make decisions about hiring, expanding, whether we need to look for more funding, whether we're going to the county board to get funding approved, things like that. I could see the policy coordinating group having, a deciding vote in those kinds of issues. So whether that's control of the funds.
Well, my question was, do we need a treasurer? When you,
I would say no, but what do you all think? I mean, you guys can decide if you want to have a treasurer who has access to the budget of pre-arrest diversion.
no,
And knows,
if we're not managing funds, we don't need a treasurer. The governing body can do that, but if
okay.
we don't have our own funds, that, okay.
I mean, there is the possibility, because we have talked about needing a way to provide financial support to our participants. The state's attorney's office is statutorily not prohibited, but by Dillon's rule, they cannot provide goods to participants. So our case managers currently cannot purchase a sandwich or a drink for a participant. So we have been looking at ways that we could set up a foundation type of thing. And that could be something that the policy coordinating group could be involved in establishing and maintaining.
But that would,
We're also looking for legislative fixes for that. So that might make it null and void.
but a foundation would be a separate body.
That's true. Actually, you're right. That would be a separate board. So no, I guess you guys don't really need a treasurer. But what do you think about having a chair versus co-chairs?
I think co-chairs would be a nice setup for so many. Since there are so many people here, you kind of divide and conquer, and this is no one's full-time job. So being able to share that responsibility would probably be nice for someone. And just jumping back, and I couldn't hear everything that you said, Vern, so excuse me if I'm off, but we have to be, according to Leeds, we have to be a governing board. That wasn't in question right now, was it?
No.
Okay, all right. I just want to I couldn't hear everything, so.
I was questioning that if we had funds we had to manage, then we need a treasurer. So that's what I was.
Okay, all right. And which also just makes me, thanks for the clarification, Bert. And then which also makes me think about the very beginning of the bylaws, where it specifically says that we're the governing board for Leeds, right? But that we advise the pre-arrest diversion program, right? Now, I wrote that because it's kind of like twofold, but
Can't be both.
we're really only here for Leeds. So we could, and I'm saying that point right now because we're talking about the funds. If we have anything to say about funds, it's only the funds that are concerning Leeds versus the pre-arrest diversion program. And so I feel like we need to just like draw that line in the sand, kind of a deal. So I'm interested in seeing what maybe you think, Martha, or anybody else. But I don't want people to be confused about why this policy coordinating group exists. But I kind of confused you all because I helped write it.
See, to me, we're either a governing board or a policy board. And to me, they're two things. I think we should be a governing board.
So policy governing coordinating group? Governing, is that what you're saying? Just changing the name around, Vern?
Just a governing board.
What about the purpose, the pre-arrest diversion, the past portion of that?
Good point.
Are you talking about changing the verbiage of the purpose?
Yes,
So like, because of the word advice?
since we're a governing board and not a committee,
Right.
should we then more clearly define what the purpose of the governing board is?
Yes. But I don't know how to do that.
Could that come from their verbiage here? Do you want me to send this document with the draft bylaws?
Sure, but in here, it doesn't mention anything from them about pre-arrest diversion. It's just all lead stuff.
Right, but our pre-arrest diversion is a lead model site.
I got you. So do you understand what I'm saying about the way that the purpose is written?
Yeah, it's just the phrasing is a bit clunky there. Here, so this needs to be, I think this part needs to be expanded out. That provides oversight and direction. That could be expanded a bit, and then I think we need to remove law enforcement assisted diversion and just put pre-arrest diversion initiative.
Okay.
Because our technical name is King County Pre-Arrest Diversion. So even though we're a lead model site, all of our contracts, MOUs, et cetera, say King County Pre-Arrest Diversion. So I think that's the term that should be used here.
Okay, I'm good with that. And then to Vern's point, should we then call ourselves the Pre-Arrest Diversion Policy Governing Board?
Yeah,
Or
I think
is
that's
it being suggested to just take the word policy out? I mean, is that the confusion point a little bit? Should it just be a PAD governing group, a PGG?
I like that.
An acronym within an acronym.
And then really, I mean, Vern, I don't know if this is what you were saying, like if you were saying that it really isn't, if it's not the vision for like the governing body to be putting policies together, is there a subgroup that does that and brings that to the governing body then?
No, my point was, a policy coordinating group is not a managing group. A governing board is. So if we need to be a governing board, then we need to be that. And we can include the fact that we manage policies, but if we're a governing board, then we're a governing board. That didn't come out right. Close.
Okay.
So it could just be King County Pre-Arrest Diversion Governing Board.
Yes.
Yes.
Can I ask, are we a governing board or are we an advisory board? Like we're making the recommendations for how you're operating this, but any budgetary things that are done, it still runs through the county board as the actual governing board. It's not an incorporated separate entity, or is it?
Corey, what's your take on that based on our meeting with the lead bureau? Because I honestly left the meeting a little bit confused on that exact delineation, because they kept insisting that it has to serve as a governing board. But I see that as being tricky because of the financial aspect. I know in their other sites, their governing boards have been the agency that applied for grants, received the funding, and then did the hiring. And therefore they had that financial control, which is why I've always seen our policy coordinating group a little bit differently. So I still struggle with that delineation. I don't know.
I couldn't hear everything that Michael said. Michael, your microphone is terrible, but I'm not gonna hold that against you. So Martha, you're gonna have to repeat what Michael said.
So he was trying to get more clarification on defining the governing board and its function based on the fact that finances and all the financial decisions are handled at a county level, whether that's through the state's attorney's office, the sheriff's office, or someday the health department, depending on where we fall. That leaves this governing board with, I guess, little power, so to say. I mean, if you don't have that financial power, but you're supposed to be a governing board, where does your power come from as a governing board to make decisions? Yes, it's a, basically boils down to policies, which is why I always saw it more as a advisory board, because you're not making those financial decisions about, hiring, et cetera, that the state's attorney's office or the sheriff's office does.
Yeah. So I believe that the intent for the way that it is to function is as a separate entity away from all other organizations that also handles the money, which gives the power to the board for decision-making purposes. That's the way that I remember it being explained and written. And I'm
right, but then,
paraphrasing.
because essentially you all don't have that control financially.
Right, and I'm just saying that's the intent, because this is
Right.
a different setup than everywhere else. Right, so I think that I don't know how we bake that into the bylaws to include that's an option. So we might just have to put it in there, but still allow us to operate the way that we are as we, continue to go on this journey from the start. I don't know exactly how we go about that, but the intent is for it to be separate, for it to be its own entity. Like that was clear. Like the intent is for it to be a governing board. That was clear. The intent was for it to have the power to make decisions. That was clear.
Mm-hmm.
So we're a different type of, we have a different type of setup. So she also didn't say, no, you can't do that. She was just like, hey, you do what fits, but really what you should be striving for is this.
I think I could probably jump in and I was going to give 2 quick points that have been kind of reiterated from the start. One is that, yes, all that stuff Corey said, that is the intent and purpose, because the whole idea behind that is that the ownership isn't with one entity, it's with this governing body that's represented by all these entities. And that's supposed to make it more of a community buy-in, a community driven. The other thing that I think we will help bring some focus maybe is that Kane County is not Seattle. And so in any time we talk about the lead program with the lead directors, they're pretty malleable in a lot of things, as long as it's not taking you away from the core focus. So I think call it, I mean, I would say if I was, Naja was sitting here, she'd probably say, well, call it whatever you want, as long as it's functional and it's serving its purpose. So I would say as long as it is meant to be its own governing body. But I don't know that the finances being tied to it, because if the governing body is deciding like how they're going to use those finances, I guess that could be driven by policy, like Martha said, but we got to make it work for Kane County, not the lead model. The lead model is exactly that. It's a model. We could stray from it if we need to and make it work for our area. And I think that's what we're trying to do. So leaving some breathing room, and however it's worded, maybe we leave it called a policy coordinating group, but write in it that it is functioning as the governing body of Kane County pre-arrest diversion.
Well, and if there is like a finance committee or whatever it might be from Kane County who's making financial decisions, it could be part of our role as a governing body to review the recommendations from the finance committee or whatever that's called.
Yes, and we can definitely, I mean, I know in the past, we haven't put on the agenda issues around hiring, et cetera, but that can definitely be something that's added. And I think maybe that's what's missing here, is that the ask of the policy coordinating group has never been one that was tied to any financial issues. And that doesn't mean that you can't make votes on things that would affect finances. I mean, I can provide you with the details of what funds we have available and what decisions need to be made. We do have some of those coming up because we will be expanding to an additional, 4 or 5 agencies in the next month or so. And we do have funds coming available to do some more hiring. We're also looking at issues around needing to expand hours or differentiate some hours to make some availability for evening, nighttime warm handoffs. So there will be things like that, yes, you wouldn't actually have your hands in the pot, but you would be voting on making decisions around things that affect the financial status of the initiative. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so for the time being, should we, as Sergeant Morgano recommended, leave it as policy coordinating group, state that it is a governing board? Is that comfortable for people, or would you like to change it to Kane County Pre-Arrest Diversion Governing Board title?
I think I don't know that I'd put governing board in the title or the description, because I think that's where we're not actually a governing board. We still have to report up to the county board. But I think if you want to make it an executive, policy executive committee or whatever, and say we're helping with the governance, but ultimately if we vote to buy a bunch of things that then the county board votes no about, that's because we didn't actually have the right to be the true governance. And I switched microphones. Can you hear me better, Corey?
Yeah, good job, Michael.
Okay, good. Yeah, I got a new microphone a couple of weeks ago. You're the first person who listened enough to tell me that feedback. So I appreciate that. That's good.
No problem, man. You're welcome.
But I personally would avoid the word governance, because I think that's the sticky wicket, because we don't have ultimate authority.
Yeah, and that's been where I've been stuck this whole time too.
But I think I agree with everything Corey said, and I agree with everything Tony said in terms of the model. If it works, we can adapt it, but I just wouldn't say we're something we're not. But if this is the group where the decisions are made, et cetera, I think saying that is fine. It's just I would fall short of saying governing.
Is there a different term you would use? I'm just going to leave a note here. Oh, did you say executive board?
I mean, if you're trying, and this is admittedly just weasel words, but if we're trying to make it sound like this is the group who's making the decisions, whatever along executive or whatever sounds good,
I think is good. And I think 99% of the time, what this group votes on is going to be what happens. It's just ultimately, there's always the chance that something could change at the board level, which I mean, I think that's low likelihood, but.
Un, do you think that would answer some of the concerns Rochelle has?
I will report back what happened
Okay.
today.
Yeah.
And also, so that raised up some questions too. So I'll ask you, Martha, that bit confused, but still I will report to her too.
I think we all are.
Okay.
If any of us are being honest.
Yeah, because I thought there was, even bylaws, regarding fiscal, but then we don't actually do it. So that was my thing, that I thought it was our advisory role to have a policy. So even bylaws, it was just a big direction. So I thought, all spelled out the day to day, everything was with the caseworker. So that was my confusion at the time when the Liz group was explaining this is a governing body and like a board of directors. So, but I'm not sufficiently familiar with the board of directors. So that was the confusion too.
Okay. No, this conversation's really helped because I don't think I was really able to articulate my sticking points on all of this. But I think this has really helped a lot in defining and differentiating the purpose and function, because we're Kane County, because we operate a little bit differently than other sites. And I think that's something that the Lead Bureau has been very clear about, is that you need to make it work for your site. So while they do provide direction, they also provide the guidance that we need to do what works for us. Yes.
Martha, while we're deciding it, and the way Michael described it does make better sense to me. So we can still be somewhat of a governing board, but where will we report? So we need to report to a committee in the county. What committee are we going to report to?
What do you think would be the best fit?
So that means we're going to report, if we're going to be a separate body, we're going to report as an individual organization. So it would probably be the judicial committee, but we would report as a separate organization. Does that make sense, Michael?
I think it does, but are we a separate organization or is this a program of Kane County? That's where I'm.
And does it, I mean, in theory, we could report to the health department, for example.
How does the daily function of the Kane County State's Attorney's Office? I know this was initially initiated, Jamie had an idea, and Martha said this is going to be independent. It is rather a more health department or Kane County organization. But that was another thing that I was confused about that too, because up until some point, I thought it was a Kane County State's Attorney's program, because of the program is people who is about to be arrested or about to be charged, they are given this option. So, and then also, Martha, that you worked, and I know the grant and all the monies and all that, but I did not know how much of a King County State's Attorney has a power, because many times that when I got involved, that, the state's attorney still have a power to arrest or charge or dismiss the cases. And so I think that was my initial thing, that always that where this our organization is under, whether it's a part of the state's attorney's program or it's King County program, and that is still just a little unclear to me.
Well, let me chime in on this one.
Yeah.
There are two things about that. One is the state's attorney is an elected official. So although she reports to the Kane County Board, she's not ruled by the Kane County Board. Elected officials are in charge of their own areas, okay?
Let's see.
And second, there are some things that states attorneys, organizations cannot do. So at some point in time, this needs to be out of the state's attorney's office based upon the way to get funding. Am I correct about that?
Yes, so we're actually in the process of figuring out how to and when to move our case management to the health department, because that's a much better fit for their role and their function. And this isn't a surprise to Michael, he knows that. So that, I mean, that is something that we looked into and are actively looking at right now. In other locations,
And something like that would make it easier for Kane County, because having too many organizations reporting to a committee does not meet for the best and best proper guidance. So reporting to the sheriff or reporting to the health department or something like that would actually be a better organization chart.
right, and we currently have, because of grants and the way that these initiatives are funded by grants, with 2 employees with pre-arrest diversion who are actually employees of the sheriff's office, and the rest are employees of the state's attorney's office. 2 individuals will be staying at the state's attorney's office, and others, everybody associated with case management will be moving under the health department. At least that's the plan, that's the discussion currently. So there will be some shifting of that, which I think may help to clarify things and delineate practices. In terms of the firewall between us and the state's attorney's office, I know I've shared with you, we have a separate database, because the data that we're collecting on participants is sensitive and shouldn't be accessible to prosecutors. This initiative is not really meant to function in a prosecutor's office, so that's why we've been intentional about being careful with those things.
Right.
So there is, yes, she does still have the power to charge, dismiss, or handle the cases how she chooses. However, when an individual signs an agreement with pre-arrest diversion, that agreement states that if they meet the criteria laid out in the agreement, they don't get those initial charges. So in that case, this does take, there's an agreement that's signed.
Thank you.
And we've had to advocate for that several times. So where are we in terms of comfort level of the changes we've made? Are we in agreement that changing governing to executive board makes more sense to everybody? And then we'll send that out. People will still have time to review. We're not voting and solidifying anything right now, but is everybody okay if I send it out like that? Okay. All right, I do want to keep us moving because I know we've had a lot of really excellent discussion. In terms of the transportation policy, I sent this out. There were 2 issues on here that we wanted to address. The transportation was very specifically addressed by the lead bureau when they were here. They believe that you can't provide quality case management if you can't transport individuals. We have a lot of folks who are houseless, lacking resources, need to get to appointments for various things. We have case managers who eagerly want to drive these individuals places. These individuals are not charged with violent crimes. We don't believe the risk is significant. Obviously, there's always some risk. So we would develop protocol, and we have some of that laid out here where they would have to let their supervisor know when and where and why, etc. I don't know if people had a chance to read through this, if this sounds okay in terms of policy. I did get some feedback. I think, Victoria, you gave me some feedback. Anybody else have issues with this? Again, I'm gonna have to send it out to everybody for a vote. Does that seem reasonable?
Well, I just so you know, I'm not comfortable with an employee driving people around.
So the issue that we've had, and people have said, well, you know, you have funds, you could get Uber. We tried that at one time for an individual. The Uber driver showed up after waiting. So the individual was ready to go to treatment, had stated he wanted to go to treatment, was sitting with his case manager, waiting for a ride to treatment. 40 minutes later, the Uber showed up and the driver looked out his window, looked at what the drive was and said, oh, nope, I can't take you, and left. We had a very antsy individual who desperately needed a ride somewhere, and we had absolutely no options to get him anywhere, and a case manager who was more than willing to drive him where he needed to be. We ended up having to rely on law enforcement. There was a lot of frustration. And when I say a lot of frustration, I'm minimizing it. They were not happy with us. That's just one situation. We've had other situations where individuals needed a ride to treatment where there is no public transportation. We did get an Uber and it cost $70. And we do have funds, but that's a lot of money. I don't know, Melina can talk to it more probably.
Yeah.
Personally, I understand the challenges, but I'm not comfortable with it. I don't think that's the kind of addition to an employee job description that we would want to have. And I would be very, very concerned about any kind of insurance or legal issues associated with that.
Hey, Martha, I have one quick addition to this, and I actually have to unfortunately duck the meeting. So I would just say, to get some security blanket, if you will, FSA, Family Services, they're outfitting their mobile crisis response employees because they're going to be going to mental health calls in the near future. They're outfitting them with kind of like essentially what are panic buttons that for the safety of their employees. And so you can do different features like that to make it safer. I certainly see the concern. I will also reference that AID has done rides in their, their counselors and whatnot have given rides to their clients. Some of the very same people we're actually talking about with this program, for several years as well. And so I think it's doable. I see the concerns, but those panic buttons would be something that would be probably very good to look into, in order to achieve it in a safer manner.
If you have any information, I think somebody gave me one name brand for those kinds of devices. But yeah, if you have any more information on that, that is something we'd be interested in.
So like take them, but in those as needed basis,
Right.
is very important.
Yeah, so Melina was just saying that the case managers do work hard towards building self-sufficiency and helping individuals find mechanisms they can utilize themselves for transportation, but there are always circumstances that come up with individuals where they need to get somewhere and there are few to no options. Even the ride and cane is absolutely impossible to use, which is, yeah, our case managers this has been the number one frustration, I would say, from our case managers for over half a year.
And I think regardless of where we end up on this is probably a good example with, are we the governing board or not? We could vote to change our policy, but if our insurer or the county pushes back, we have to acquiesce to that decision too. But I definitely see the struggle with not being able to get people where they need to go.
Martha, I do feel like you had provided some other materials previously, and it is something okay with the county, right? Like transport. And
yeah,
there's-
so
yeah.
county policy states that they don't, I know I sent it in an email, it says something like not to transport individuals unless required for your position. And that's all that that's the only verbiage that exists in county policy. Jen Peacock, who unfortunately had to leave for another meeting, has experience with us working in drug court and probation. They had policies set up where they had to have 2 people in the car with the individual, they had to sit in a certain formation, et cetera. That's another thing that we could look at utilizing. I know we've made it clear to our case managers if they ever feel unsafe, they can go out with 2 people, even if it's just to a meeting with an individual. So that would definitely apply as well to transporting people.
That's kind of what we do at Ecker Center. We transport people all the time. But if somebody ever felt like this is questionable, then, people have the wherewithal to make a decision. I'm not comfortable transporting this person, or somebody's highly intoxicated. We don't want them transporting that person.
Right. And we do have to keep in mind that these are individuals our case managers have built very strong relationships with. They've worked with these people, multiple times a week over a period of time. They have a relationship with individuals. It's not like they're hopping in and driving someone that they've never met.
Yeah, and we do the same thing. The idea, like if we're going to be transporting people, it should be part of our treatment conversation. And how do we help somebody work towards being self-sufficient in transportation versus relying on the paid support to do that.
Yeah. Well, I'll send this out again for further conversation, and we won't vote on it until I get a little more feedback. I think I got 2 or 3 people responded to it before. I'll see if I can get some more feedback on it before we do actually vote on it. And we may have to put off voting until the October meeting to do it in person. But I at least have one case manager here as witness that we did discuss this because it's been incredibly frustrating for them.
And I
Can I interject on this one?
Sure. Oh, you froze. Maybe do it without video.
Oh, can you hear me?
Your audio is
Hold
good,
on.
but your video freezes.
Okay, let me try without video.
There you go.
Any better?
Yep.
So
It was better, now it's not.
law enforcement standpoint, I'm thinking that just any, how about, can you hear
Still
me?
not, no, it's cutting out really badly.
How about now?
Are you there?
Yeah.
No, it's cutting out again.
Hear me?
No. How about this? I'll send this out again, and Officer Burrows, if you want to email your response to the whole group, I think it would be beneficial to have this conversation where more people see and hear. Is that okay? So I do want to make sure we get people out of here. I've lost my screen. All right. So our next in-person meeting is October 18th at 1:30. We'll offer it as hybrid again. I know people's schedules can be tight and you all are very busy individuals. So if you can come in person, you're always welcome. Otherwise, definitely join by Zoom. I will send out those documents. I'll send out the lead bureau's description of the policy coordinating group, as well as our draft bylaws and the safety protocol, and look forward to everyone's feedback. And thank you all again for your time today and the great discussion we had.
Thank you.
All right, take care, everybody.
Thanks. See you later.
All right, bye.